And I think God is telling those stories in our community all the time. So we're going to sit down for a moment and listen to how God has worked in Erica's life. Yeah, same place. Erica, what's your story? That's going to be my basic question.
It's kind of, can you hear me? Okay. It's kind of hard to put it in a few words, but some of you might know me, but I've been here for about 3.5 years. And I came here after I left my husband. We were married for 10 years. And I was married when I was 20. I knew him since I was 15. We dated for a couple of years, and I ended up getting pregnant, so I was married young, and I wish I could blame it on that. But my relationship with him started out kind of exciting. He was very protective of me. I felt very safe. He wanted to be with me all the time, so I felt very loved in that way. But after we got married, things got worse, and the person I knew, that I thought I knew in him, was very different, because he was very different to other people than he was behind closed doors. There was a progression in our relationship where he kind of started off with the isolation. He hated my family and my friends, and I really got to the point where I didn't have anybody but him. And I know now that he did that on purpose. But I was young, and all my friends were out at college, and I was alone. I had a baby at home, and he would do things that I kind of chalked up to him having an anger problem. And just things like punching holes in walls and throwing chairs. And when our son was young, he would get very upset when he cried. I remember once we were driving, and Colin was probably 2 months old, and we could not get him to be quiet. He was very colicky. And my husband swore at me like it was my fault and punched a hole in the windshield of the car. That, you'd think that would be a sign to me, but no, I continued for 10 years in our marriage, and just thinking that it must be my fault. I must have been doing something wrong because he was not happy. And no matter what I did, he wasn't happy. So I must have just been doing it wrong.
So it's like you're sort of caught in like a cycle in a sense, it seems like.
Yeah. He would get, just like she was talking about, he would be very, very angry and get to this point where he was explosive. And it was my fault, of course. He was very good at arguing with me and arguing his point, but then he would be very apologetic, and things would be okay for a couple months, and that person that I fell in love with, I would see that again, and I would have hope that maybe our marriage would be okay.
And then at some point along the line, things began to shift, and you began to think, hold on a second, this cycle's been going on. Maybe talk for a second about, that transition. How did that work?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me was I didn't recognize it as abuse because he didn't bruise me very often. He broke objects, and he would break things over my head or, get in my face. But I wasn't hurt physically very, very often by him. So, but what really hit me, I remember the first time I just really thought, man, there's something wrong with this. He threw my son on the couch. He was, I want to say 3.5, and slapped him really hard across the face. He had a bruise from here to here. At that point, my husband was a youth pastor. And we couldn't go to church for 2 weeks until the bruise went away. He went to church, but the family was sick. For the people that did come over, there was an excuse. He said our son fell down the stairs. And just hearing him say this story to the youth group kids when they came over about how he was being a silly kid and he fell down the stairs, I was having such a hard time because these kids looked up to him. And then, there was a time when I remember it was toward the beginning of the school year, and he actually did bruise me. And it was probably like an 80-degree day, and we were doing relays outside with the youth group kids, and I had to wear a long sleeve shirt because of the bruises on my arms. And I was sweating my butt off, and I'm thinking, this is strange. This is kind of not right. But it wasn't, to me, it wasn't necessarily one incident, but it was more that I kind of realized that I was living a lie. And the more that I realized that people were looking up to him, and I was a part of that, it was just hard for me to let that continue. So I went to our church board, and this is not RiverTree, just so you know. And I had taken pictures, which I'm not even sure why I did, but I did. I had a picture of our son when he had bruised him, and I brought in some pictures of different things he had damaged around the house, and I just asked them for help. I said, I don't think he should be a youth pastor. We are falling apart. This is not okay. I didn't accept it as abuse at that point. I just needed help. He needed help. But the hardest thing for me was that they didn't know how to react. They asked him to step down, but they wanted it to be quiet, and they wanted our marriage to survive, really for the sake of the church, I think, and how it made them look. But
so it was as if they did some things right, but
yes.
Other things, it was like, do you think they fully understood like what it meant to sort of leave that for you? Did you feel sort of supported?
I did. Initially, they came up with a plan to get me out of the house and helped give me phone numbers of some board members in the church to call if I needed to leave right away. We had a plan of they were going to bring him into a meeting and confront him and say, your wife is leaving, we're going to put her in a safe place, and we're going to get you help. And that was good. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way because he found out that I was leaving, and we had about a half an hour to get out of the house. So that was the hardest thing for me, was that, I had 3 kids, and we packed stuff up in a couple of laundry hampers. We had nothing. I didn't have a regular job, and we were technically homeless. So where the church really could have helped more was to continue supporting me when we were lost and not knowing where to live, where to go. I was scared. But I think they were scared because they didn't know how to react, because it was a really uncomfortable situation.
And at some point, you also received, amidst that process of sort of leaving, at some point you found support from some folks here, I think.
Yeah, I did.
Somewhere along that line.
It's kind of interesting how God does things, but my support initially came from Safe Haven, where I really realized that he was abusive and that I wasn't alone. And I ended up coming to RiverTree because of a friend inviting me here, but God brought people in my life here and gave me a community of people when I was so alone. And that's one thing that I don't think people understand, is how alone you feel. And my good friend Amy, I met her because of I don't know, God must be, but she had gone to Safe Haven too, and our kids had recognized each other from the nursery at Safe Haven. And her daughter mentioned it to Amy and said, "Hey, I play with that boy at Safe Haven." So of course she had to talk to me. And I did not really want to be talked to. I wanted to hide in the corner because I was very wounded by church, and I wasn't ready to let people in. But she kept loving me, and she encouraged me to talk to Pastor Chris. And sorry.
All good.
I think the biggest thing for me that just really changed my life was that he showed me that it wasn't my fault, and helped me let go of some of that guilt, because I thought I was sinning by choosing to leave my husband. And he helped me understand that my husband was the one that broke our vows. And just the process of leaving is not just the day that you leave, but like months of fear and trying to find your place in the world. And when you mix kids in it, like, we were on the run for an entire summer. We didn't have any place to live that was our own, so he kept finding us, and we kept moving, staying at other people's houses. And the whole time I had this community of people. And I remember when we finally did find a place to call home, RiverTree helped me because he found us again, and I was determined not to leave our home again. So they put us up in a hotel while we could get an alarm system in our house so that I could feel safe. And my kids thought it was a vacation.
That's cool.
Yeah. But people from RiverTree came and paid for the hotel and made it possible, you know? There's so many more things that they did, but...
They kind of were the practical hands of love in that situation.
Yeah.
For a season.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I went from being technically homeless and alone to having a huge group of friends and, you know, a small group. And I have a job because Mark Carey got me a job. And I have a car because people at this church bought me a car when mine died. My lights weren't turned off because they helped pay my bills. And it's things like that.
Your story is so powerful, Erica. And it, we recognize that it took a ton of courage to stand up here and say, like, this is what happened. This is the rough spots, and this is how God used the community of people to support me in a season of just despair and confusion and loss. Thank you so much for offering your story. And I think implicit in your story are so many different ways. It's inspiring to us because we see the different ways that Julia talked about before. How is it that we do this support thing? What does that look like? Well, for you, Erica, it looked like a hotel for a time. Safe Haven did their part. We each sort of stepped in at different points, we being the communities, and sort of did our best to support. God be praised. That is so exciting. So I would love to pray as we kind of close here, but the reason that we're able to do those sort of things is because we know about it. And so today we're understanding more how we can do the things, like those lofty, amazing, cool things. What does that look like? Like, let's put some flesh and bone on that skeleton. I think we've done at least some of that today. We're going to close with a video that's about love, and what does love do? What is love like? What is agape, unconditional love? What is that like? So I'm going to pray, and then we're going to watch that video, and that'll be our official dismissal. So would you pray with me? Father, thank you so much for Erica and her story and her honesty. We see your redemption sort of trickling through that story at every part. Would you continue to uphold your daughter, Erica, in her comings and her goings? Be with her, bind her, and surround her. God, would you be with women and also men that are in just difficult domestic situations, that are not sure of what exactly to do? God, would you support them? Would you use us? Would you use the hands that we have and the bank accounts that we have and the homes and the hospitality that we have? God, we want to offer all of us to you, to your people. Be with us this day and speak to us too through this simple video as we close. In your name I pray. Amen.